Welcome to another episode of Old Bridge Outlook with Mayor Debbie Walker. I'm David Lee Hernandez Jr., your host. Join us as we engage with the mayor and other distinguished guests, elected officials, and community leaders to explore the pivotal challenges, uplifting stories, and groundbreaking ideas that are shaping our town. Today's guest is Camillo Vitale, our Grand Marshal for the upcoming annual Memorial Day Parade here in Old Bridge Township on May 26, starting at 9 a.m. Mayor Walker, Mr. Vitale, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David, so much for hosting. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So this is exciting. You are the Grand Marshal of our Memorial Day Parade. So congratulations on the nomination and the selection of being our Grand Marshal. I know it's a great honor.
Thank you. It is a great honor.
Absolutely. So we're excited to learn a lot about you, your family, your military background, you as a resident here in Old Bridge. And, as we go through this Memorial Day and we honor those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, tell me a little bit about what it means to be the Grand Marshal.
Well, I'm so excited to be the Grand Marshal this year. It's a very important year to be the Grand Marshal. As you know, our country started basically in 1775. And it's our 250th anniversary. So I really wanted to be the Grand Marshal this year.
Well, someone heard you because you got nominated and selected, right, Mayor?
Yes.
So what a special time then for you and your family to be the Grand Marshal. But, one of the nice things about our opportunity here on the show is so that people get to learn a little bit about you. Obviously, you are a veteran. What led you to going into the military?
Back when I was in high school in 1973, there was a fuel shortage back then. And then as we moved forward, 74, 75, jobs were hard to come by. And I decided at the time I was engaged to be married, needed a good, secure, solid job. Vietnam was still going on, just ending in 1975, and that's when I decided it was time to join the military.
Time to go in. And, it's always fascinating that the different reasons why folks decide to join the armed forces. But when you went into the Army, tell us a little bit about basic training. What was that like?
Basic training was just exactly what it says. They train you to basic rifle marksmanship, first aid, all the basic things you need to do as a soldier, not only for you to survive, but to help your fellow soldiers.
So now, I think the idea for civilians typically is it's very physically challenging. You're running, your push-ups, your pull-ups, you're doing all those type of things. So they're really getting you ready for the physicality of the role. Was that the case for you?
Yes. When you're young, that doesn't seem like it's that important. You just do it. Mm-hmm. But as you get older, you realize what you were doing.
We wouldn't survive boot camp today.
No, it certainly is tough. So one thing that I'm always very interested in learning about is you made the decision to go into the military and the Army specifically, but how did your family, your close friends, receive the news that you had made that decision?
Well, I had, when I went to the recruiter, we had draft cards back then. And when I went to the recruiter and told him that I wanted to join, he said, "Do you have a friend that wants to join?" Because back then they had what they called the buddy system. So I had a close friend and I talked to him and we were going to go in the buddy system. You both went to the same basic training unit, then you were both assigned to the same all the way through. So it made joining the military back then a lot easier. Shortly before I went in, raised my right hand, my friend broke his collarbone. Mm-hmm. Never did what I did.
Interesting.
So it was a time when a young guy from Brooklyn who never left Sheepshead Bay was on his own.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it stretched you and it made you grow a little bit. But that's always very interesting. Now, how did your family receive the news?
Well, my brother was in the Navy, So, and my whole family, basically, my father was in the Army, all my uncles in World War II were in the Army, both sides of the family. So joining the military wasn't something that was like, oh my God, you know.
Right.
This was, hey, straighten the kid's life out, you know, one of those where you find yourself and you're moving forward in life.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it, a kid from Brooklyn, Sheepshead Bay, going into the military and being sent to basic training and then all over the place? How was that for you?
It was culture shock. I went from a New York kid, they sent me to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where you meet a new group of people from all over the country. You know, their language was different than ours in Brooklyn. We have that Brooklyn accent. They have that Southern accent. They call what we were calling dungarees. They called them breeches. Lunch was dinner. Dinner was supper. Was, you know, you're standing there and you're it's a whole new life.
Yeah. You know, but I think that's also the beauty of it. You bring all these people together from different parts of the country that are completely juxtaposed in their cultures, in their dialects, but then they're there for the common purpose, right, of serving their country, and certainly becoming brothers in arms. And I think the mayor had a few questions.
I want to know, where were you stationed?
I was stationed first Fort Jackson for basic training. And I never had the opportunity to go to AIT because I was considered a trained mechanic before I went in.
Now, real quick, what is AIT?
Advanced Individual Training.
Okay, thank you.
So they took me from Fort Jackson and I was shipped straight to West Berlin, Germany. I stayed in Berlin approximately 2 years, went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I got out from there. I ended my active service in Fort Benning.
How many years did you serve in the military?
I served 4 years active, then I got out, and then I went back in the New York Army National Guard in 1984, served active to 85, and then inactive until 1992.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Now, do you know why you were sent to West Berlin?
I do. The military at that time thought that the communists would be emboldened at that point because we were leaving Vietnam. Vietnam was being taken over by the communist regime. And Russia was in East Berlin. The wall was up. We, the Americans, the British and the French occupied West Berlin, and they were free. Behind us was the East Germans, which was also communist. So we were surrounded, basically, this one little, we used to call us the outpost of freedom. So yeah, that's basically why they were maneuvering and reorganizing and making sure that nothing happened in Berlin.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service there and being that outpost of freedom, giving hope in those areas. Now, you mentioned something a little bit earlier about engaged or being married before you went into basic training. Tell us a little bit about. I see a big smile coming on. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Greatest time. Right out of high school, I met my girlfriend. And she had one more year to go. And then in 1974, during the holidays, Christmas holidays, we got engaged. And then 1970, so the wedding was being planned, things were happening, and I went into service 1 January 1975. We were married March 8th, 1975.
So now, did you have to do some wheeling and dealing with your commander to leave, or this was something that was already kind of planned?
No, the wedding was planned, just that the military didn't know that.
Okay.
You know, and me being me, I go in the Army and I assume you go through basic training, I can go home, get married, and
come back.
Then they'll tell me what to do next, you know. Little did I know that I should have asked before time. And as I was graduating, I had mentioned to the drill instructor that I was going home to get married. And he looked at me and basically said, "You married the Army before you married your wife." Yeah. So he kind of giggled, because I'm sure he's seen this before. And I was in shock. And then, and then I had to go talk to the commanding officer and, get leave. It wasn't something that the military usually would do. But thank God I had a great drill instructor and a great commanding officer, and they said, "Yeah, go home. You have 2 days.
Wow. Okay.
Go home, get married, come back."
Sounds good. Sounds good.
What happened with your wife? Were you able to take her with you?
That was another one. I assumed that that's what you do. You get married, you take your wife with you. So we went back to Fort Jackson, and you really don't have any place to live.
Because you're in barracks with everybody else? Or
well, at that point, they don't even know I'm married, so they don't have quarters. So on post, they had these, they might have called it a hotel. It wasn't really, but you could rent rooms on post. So that's what I did. And then she went back home, and then I stayed until my orders came in to go to Berlin. And then I went back home because the commanding officer said, "Go back to New York soon as your orders get here." So he was really nice about it. And then when my orders came in, he said, "Don't even come back to Fort Jackson. You could leave from New York."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So now how was her reaction when you decided to go into the military? You guys are dating, maybe even engaged. Real quick, what was her reaction when you said you're going in?
I never asked her what her reaction was because I kind of just did it. I'm sure she thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. Well, look, it's beautiful when you have the support of a fiance, your future wife, your family, the family history of continuing that legacy of military service. So we have a lot more questions for you, but real quick, we're going to take our break. But it's been a real pleasure being here with the mayor and Mr. Vitale as we learn a little bit more about our Grand Marshal.
Have you ever helped a fellow veteran?
Of course.
Yes.
Have you ever asked for help yourself?
It's always tough, right? I always feel like I can solve my own problems, but eventually, you just can't deal with it on your own.
And you start to question, maybe people would be better off without me.
When you realize that you're not alone, once you take that first step, there's so much support.
For decades, I've taught you everything I know. How to safely build a fire, and how to control the flames. But I can only teach wildfire prevention. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Thank you for calling the National Problem Gambling Helpline. How can I help?
So glad you can make it.
Welcome back to Old Bridge Outlook. I'm David Hernandez, and we're sitting today with the mayor and Mr. Vitale, our Grand Marshal, for the Memorial Day Parade. Welcome back after our break. Well, we had a great time learning about your history going in, your family. We went into the break talking a little bit about West Berlin, and want to pick that back up and ask you, what was your role or your job when you were in West Berlin?
I enlisted for wheel vehicle mechanic, infantry. But little did I know is that you're not just a mechanic. Yeah, that was your normal daily routine, but you had to do everything that the actual military infantry did. So that was like an added bonus, if you want to call it a
Sure,
bonus.
yeah, right. Yeah. Absolutely. So while you were there and doing your work, what was it like living in West Berlin at that time?
I initially first got there, and I had to rent an apartment, what we called on the economy, out in West Berlin, because I wanted my wife to come. She was still stateside at that time. And so I was able to rent a small, they weren't apartments like we had here in the States. They were basically really economy.
Efficiency type?
Yeah, your bedroom, you had to climb out of the bed because the walls were, it was really tight. The kitchens were small, typical European stuff. And then after that, we were able to get quarters. And the Army quarters that they provided for us in West Berlin were decent. They were bigger, but not overly sized.
Gotcha.
So were you stationed by that Checkpoint Charlie or the Berlin Wall?
Checkpoint Charlie, we used to go through to get to West Germany, because when we went to the field, we trained in West Germany. That was free also. Checkpoint Charlie was very strict. When you approached the checkpoint, you had the Russians there, you had the Americans there. They literally made sure who you were, what you were. It was a very, very strictly ran checkpoint. The wall, I have to say, you could walk right up to the wall. You could look over the wall. And every time you did that, you said, why do people want to live that way? And I had the wall, well, you could call it the wall. It was a fence in the back of my motor pool. And I used to be able to walk all the way to the back of the motor pool and literally wave at the German guard up in the machine gun towers. They would never wave back. They weren't allowed to. But I thought it was something that we should do, is go up there and just, good morning.
Sure.
And then go about your daily.
So history falls on our side and falls on democracy and freedom, especially with the wall coming down. So what are your perspectives on having worked right there at that wall and then it coming down many years later?
You're overwhelmed. And I tell everybody, I said, when that wall came down, nobody ran towards the communist side. They all ran to freedom.
Right.
That's right.
And the kids today, they don't understand that. I look at some of the people that want to become socialist or communist for some reason. When they have this here, they need to go there.
Yeah.
They need to go to a true communist place and see what they're in for, if that's what they're asking for.
Well, I think it's such an amazing perspective that you have, Mr. Vitale, of being able to have seen both sides of that. And you mentioned in the earlier segment that it was the outpost of freedom. And now that wall's falling and freedom reigns over there. But, the perspective that you have is probably one that very few will ever have again, because you patrolled that wall. You stood there, and then you saw the people on the other side, and then you saw it come down, and now you saw it come all the way around. So it's just incredible, and even more so to have you as our Grand Marshal, to be able to be the witness and really stand and be an advocate for freedom, because that's really what you are, is an advocate for freedom all around. And when you think about America, it's almost a given right that we have it. but you went to Europe and you were that shining post for freedom. So
I don't
thank
think you know what you have till you lose it. So
Right.
like we said during the break, if you have a wall of machine guns to keep people in, how good could it be? Right?
That's a great point, Mayor. That's a great point. So, well, again, thank you so much for your service. It's incredible. I understand you have some medals. Can you tell us a little bit about your medals?
Yeah, well, let me.
Get the cheat sheet.
Yeah. Well, the Presidential Unit Citation was awarded to the Berlin Brigade, so we got to wear that. Army Occupational Medal is because we occupied West Berlin from 1945 to 1991. And National Defense, everybody, I guess, gets out of basic training receiving that ribbon. Certificates of achievement for Berlin, as I used to volunteer a lot of my time with youth sports leagues. I would coach little league teams, and I said I used to run with the Army, you know.
Right,
and
yeah.
Basically, the Army was good at mixing your exercise programs and making them fun.
Nice.
You know, we had a all-Army softball team there. I was part of that. So a lot of the achievements came for all those extracurricular activities that I used to do. Expert rifle and grenade, I was awarded that in basic training. You have like gold, bronze, silver. So I was able to achieve the expert in both of those. Drivers and mechanics badge, we were awarded that in Berlin. We went to West Germany to take courses, and I was able to achieve a 3-week course in 3 days, which was one of the only guys who ever did that
There you go.
in the Berlin history.
Fantastic.
I understand you're sending a medal to Williamsburg. What's that about?
Well, my wife and I love Colonial Williamsburg, and they love all veterans there. I don't know how many of you have been to Colonial Williamsburg, but as you're walking down the main street, they have a place for veterans to go in, cool off, sit, have coffee, you know, and discuss the day or whatever with the people who are running the office there. And so I went there with my wife, and I was looking at all the Army patches and military patches that people donate. And I noticed there wasn't anything there from Berlin, and there was a thing on the wall where you had what you call challenge coins. They're about the size of a silver dollar.
Right.
So I was talking to my wife, and the ladies were really close by that were running the place. And I said, you know, I don't see anything here from Berlin. So she says, oh, you were stationed in Berlin? And I said, yes. So I said, you know, I wish I would have known. I would have brought you something, you know. So I said, you know what? Next time I come, I'm going to bring you one of the Berlin challenge coins. They're hard to come by because no more Berlin Brigade.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
So she said, we would certainly appreciate that. So I made sure I had new ones, and I put it away, and I said, this, I'm going to make sure I get there and give it to this lady. The next time we go back, we were there because like a vacation, and we were going to Busch Gardens. And it was more of a gift for the grandkids to go to Busch Gardens and do all the rides and everything. And in my mind, I'm saying, I have to bring this coin, you know. And the morning we get there, it's pouring. And they shut down all the rides, so you couldn't go into Busch Gardens. And the family decided that we would take it somewhere else. So we did, and I never got a chance to deliver the coin.
That's how life works
So-
sometimes.
So now it's a must.
That's right. Well, I look, and now you get to do it as a Grand Marshal.
Yeah,
right? So
I
Yeah,
could do it
true.
that way.
Even
Yeah.
better. Even better.
What did you do after the war, after the service?
Well, first I I went to work for New York City Police Department. They had a program for veterans, and I drove a tow truck for the New York City Police Department. Then I worked in a gas station. After the gas station, I took a lot of civil service tests, and I went to work for New York City Department of Parks as a mechanic. Then I was called by the New York City Police Department to be a police officer, so I went there. As I was ready to graduate the police academy, the Parks Department called me back, permanent auto mechanic, and it was a lot more money. So at that time, raising a young family and wanting to buy a house, I said, well, my wife kind of said, it was better to go for the money.
Watch out, she's going to be watching this. All right.
So, what do you currently do?
I'm a special police officer for the town. It's part-time position. Mostly I work in the court.
Well, you got to fulfill your police officer.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
you got to
you
a
got
little
both.
bit later. That's right.
I've been doing that since 2002.
Wonderful. So, you're the Grand Marshal for Old Bridge Township. So when did your family come into the town? How long have you been a resident in the town?
1988.
Okay.
Actually, December 1988, we moved into the town in the Cliffwood Beach section.
Very nice. Now, did the kids go to school locally? Are they still in town?
Yes. Well, my oldest son graduated high school here, went through all the schools. My daughter went through all the schools, still lives in the town. My son Tony went through all the schools. He still lives in the town. But my oldest son, he lives in Orlando, Florida.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, I see that you have the 3 kids, 2 grandkids?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Are they all going to be up here for your Grand Marshal?
Well, the grandkids don't live too far away, so I hope they come.
That's great.
They
And
only
he's-
have to walk a few blocks.
And he's a Boy Scout. One of them's a Boy Scout, the older one, and they're always in the parade. So
Wonderful,
that
wonderful.
should be fun.
So, how do you feel when you reflect back? You're a Grand Marshal. You're involved. Your military career kind of set you up for working with the city, and then now down in the township here. When you look back, how do you feel about your service?
It opened up so many doors for me. I mean, you start as young as I was with basically menial jobs, and then when you get out of the service, they give you take tests and you get extra points, and you just the doors open up for you as a veteran, and I don't think I would have had those opportunities if it wasn't for the service.
Right.
Like you said, back then the economy was really bad. It was good that you went in, that you got some good training that you could use for your whole life.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, as Grand Marshal, what's the one thing you're looking forward to during the parade?
Well, I've done so many parades.
But now you're the man of the hour.
That's it.
Yeah,
It's different.
You get to throw things. You get to wave like a queen.
You're going to be in the car.
Well, that's another thing I said. I've always walked the parade. I've never rode. I've always carried the American flag or the township flag or the flag of the VFW. And so when they said you'd have to sit in the car and just wave, I said, yeah, that doesn't sound like me.
Well, you know what? That confirms that you're the right man for the role. Not you're used to walking with a flag. You're used to laboring for the veterans, not being the waver there. So we are tremendously honored to have you represent our town. We're thankful for your service.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you have any words in closing?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to your speech. You have to give a big speech,
Yes, I've been working on that.
All right.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the Memorial Day Parade.
Thank you, Mayor.
And it's I'm proud that you work for the township, too.
I try to always serve the community in some way since I was a veteran.
Well, we can see that, and now the community gets to serve you by honoring you as the Grand Marshal. So once again, the Memorial Day Parade is going to be on May 26th at 9 o'clock. It's starting on Eli Avenue and Lawrence Harbor Parkway. Make sure to go to the township website. You can get some more information on that. But as far as the selection of the Grand Marshal, I don't think we could have found a better gentleman to serve as Grand Marshal. So, Mr. Vitale, it's an honor to have you here on Old Bridge Outlook with myself and the mayor, and we look forward to seeing you on Memorial Day.
Well, thank you, and you will.
Thank you.
Really,
God willing.
We really appreciate your service to our country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And once again, my name is David Hernandez with Old Bridge Outlook, and it's been an honor to be with the mayor here again, as well as with Mr. Vitale, our Grand Marshal, for the Memorial Day Parade.